hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Hippotuple Growth Podcast. But we've been out for a couple of weeks, so appreciate your patience on just waiting for some new content to come out. Upon my return, there was actually something that happened in real time that I was sharing with Lisa a little bit earlier in the week, and something that I know plagues most people, which is completing tasks all the way through. And there was a situation that had happened at my home where I had returned for some travels, and there was tasks partially done, and not just one, but probably about 15 or 16 of them that I really had expected to be done, in our absence. And so I wanted to bring that up because it was something that I know in my previous life I had really struggled with. I know whether you're a professional, an entrepreneur, a parent, whatever it is, like at some point you're doing something almost every single day where you have to make a decision. Do I complete this thing all the way through, or do I do partial tasks just to make a little bit of progress? And so Lisa, with that setting, let's get some thoughts from you maybe about your personal experience and thoughts around that.
Yeah, I think it's a great topic. It's one I would say we all struggle with. I know I still think about it periodically and catch myself. And the one that I notice the most is something that Andy Frisella called out a long time ago, which is someone's ability to finish a book completely.
Mm-hmm.
I am notorious for starting a book, getting about 3/4 of the way through, and then I'm like, I got the gist of it, I'm good. And when he was talking about it, I was like, oh, that's right. And that was actually the awareness point of, oh, I wonder how many other things that I get most of the way there, or to a place where I'm like, that's good enough, versus actually going all the way through to the end of whatever milestone or timeline or project that it is. And I think we do it for a couple of reasons. I don't think I'm alone. I think one of it is, well, I put in enough work to feel good about it. It's most of the way there. My attention got moved somewhere else. But I think a lot of people just sit and wait for something to happen so that they don't have to do something. And I think that's especially true in work, but then also a lot in like maybe big changes that we know we need to make. And we lack the ability to see it through because we're like, well, something will happen. My kid's sport will start, or winter's coming. There'll be something that then I can use as an excuse to not have to take action and follow it all the way through to create change.
Interesting. I hadn't thought about it in that capacity. There's I pulled some notes together before the call. There's some effects. There's obviously long-term productivity. There's getting in the flow state. There's the dopamine hit of completing, things to completion. So, but I hadn't really thought about people waiting for that. Can you maybe explain that a little bit more? Is that something that you've dealt with, or is it something that you've just noticed in other people?
I'm sure I'm not immune to it, but I think it's
Only
for
other
me.
people. Yeah.
It's not just other people. But I think it's more common in a work setting, right? So if you think about, take this dumb example, like your email inbox fills every day. And you may say, in the new year, I'm going to respond to emails within 48 hours. I'm going to clear my inbox every day so I stay on top of things, understand what's happening, yada, yada, yada. And as the year progresses, we fall into a pattern of, well, if I don't respond, someone else will. If I don't volunteer to lead this initiative, someone else will. Maybe this will become less of a priority. The business will lose funding to do that. So those are the most readily available examples to me. But I also know I've seen it in personal lives, particularly around health and fitness, where people know they want to make change. They start to make change, but then they kind of don't go all in because they're like, well, traveling baseball season's coming up and I'm going to be out of town every weekend for a tournament. So I might as well, just kind of like call my half-hour walk good enough because I know I'm going to be eating out every weekend when we travel. And we look for things that are life circumstances to happen to us to allow us the excuse to not go all the way to commit and completion. Or we look for someone else to step in and take whatever it is off of our plate in the professional setting.
That's actually interesting. I like that, and I can see that a lot. And it's something that I know I personally struggled with. I don't necessarily think that I wait for something else to happen. I wouldn't say that. But I do multitask quite a bit, which I'm trying to get better at. I will get distracted very easily, so I'm trying to be much more focused in making sure I get things to completion. But the other thing is, and I find this actually with the Hippotuple Growth app, which is ironic, and I actually have to stop myself from doing this. I'm all about progress, right? And sometimes I will
Yeah.
catch myself saying, hey, well, I'm only going to do a little bit today and then leave some more for tomorrow so I can put it on my list again. And
Hmm.
I don't think that's healthy either. Like
Yeah.
I've actually tried to make a much more healthy and conscientious decision to say, hey, this is the task for today. Now, if it's a
Yeah.
long task, right? So as an example, I'm reviewing a bunch of resumes. So sitting down for 3 hours and going through all the resumes is not, it's not going to help me. I'm going to get tired. I'm going to miss things, right? So something like that, I will chunk out in time, 30
Yeah.
minutes or an hour a day. But if it is a task where I need to go create, some promotional thing, or I need to sit down because I'm working on marketing for the business, I will sit down and I will make sure I'm completing something all the way through. So I definitely know that I fall prey to that. It is top of mind. But I did, like I said, I pulled together some notes. There's some really interesting things that I wanted to talk about here and get your perspective. So one, I stumbled upon something called the Zeigarnik, um, the Zeigarnik effect, and really what that is so people did some studies a while back. It looks like it was some Russian studies, but what was really interesting is they found that people tend to remember tasks that they haven't completed or that have been interrupted, more so actually than the tasks that they've actually completed. And really, what that means is in the back of our minds, and I feel this all the time. Let me know if you
Hmm.
feel the same thing, but it's this quasi need to get back to the thing that we didn't finish. And so, right, in other words, when you don't finish something, there's always this like lingering thing in the back of your mind where you're like, hey, I didn't give that my all, or hey, I, got this 75% of the
Yeah.
way, but now great, I have to go finish this thing. And I found I am way more productive. I have much more mind share. I'm way faster at actually executing on things when I sit down and I just say, hey, I'm not going to do 30 minutes on this. I'm going to finish this task.
Yeah, I have a couple thoughts on that. Yes, I think that's true. Our brain remembers what we don't finish. I also think there's a component to it that goes deeper because your brain knows and you know down to your core when you've said you're going to do something and you don't fully complete it or you don't even start it.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes back to what we've talked about a number of times, which is keeping the promises that you make to yourself because it degrades your own self-confidence
Mm-hmm.
every time you don't follow through.
Yeah.
So not only do you remember because it's an unfinished task, but there is an element of I didn't follow through with what I said I was going to do. And that to me is almost the bigger issue that compounds when people have a habit of not taking tasks all the
Yeah.
way to completion.
Yeah.
Uh, Sorry, point number two.
Okay. Like it.
Point number two is on the Habitual Growth app and looking at what you're putting in your actions. You mentioned, trying to save a little bit for the next day. And
Mm-hmm.
I think you're not alone. I've done the same thing. I think a lot of people would because that is the easy way out. Well, if I put 30 minutes here, then I can save 30 minutes for forever. When the purpose of building your essential actions list is what do I need to get done today to really move the needle? And
Mm-hmm.
in some case, it is completion of a full task. In other instances, because of the amount of work or mind share or whatever else needs to go into it, you will actually move the progress needle further if you break it into multiple days. And so it's not an all or nothing. There's no right way to add something to your list, but
Mm-hmm.
that's how I've started to think about it is when I'm adding something, why am I adding it in this way? And is it the best way to move the needle forward today towards whatever goal or ultimate end that I'm trying to achieve?
I love that. I think that's so key, and I've done the same thing. Actually, I love that you brought that up because I specifically will look at keywords that I'm putting into my essential action list, and if I'm not putting things like complete this,
Yeah.
finish this, then I know something else. Like there's something else going on in the back of my mind, and I can have that internal conversation. I can listen to my dialogue. And then I will change it for the most part, or I will conscientiously make that decision, like you were saying.
Yeah.
Like if there's a bigger task, I can chunk it out. But if it's something where I'm just being lazy or think I'm going to run out of time or I'm not feeling as motivated, I will specifically go back and
Yeah.
change the language to make sure that I get it done because that's how you really stay on top of things.
Mhm.
Now, I want to go back to a couple of the other points that you made around the benefits of actually completing things. So one, there's a very large dopamine hit. There's a lot of research out there when you get some sort of small win, but there's a bigger dopamine hit when you get something off of your plate and you don't have to think about it again. That actually correlates to what's known as task completion bias. So subconsciously, a lot of times what will happen is we will always gravitate towards the easiest thing to accomplish, right?
For sure. Yeah.
So like, hey, I've got 10 things. One is really hard, 5 are really easy. I'm going to go do the 5 really easy ones because I'm going to get those quick dopamine hits. But that actually doesn't satisfy us long term, especially when it comes to productivity. So it's kind of like scrolling on social media. It's like, I'm avoiding this project, but I'm going to do quote unquote research on social media for a couple of minutes, and I'm going to see my FOMO or whatever it is that I'm living, through social media vicariously through other people. But I get that little hit, and then I have to go back and deal with a big task. When you actually focus and complete something, it's a much stronger dopamine hit, but you actually lead to long-term behaviors that make you more productive over time. And that really is key. And that goes back to a lot of what you were saying.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and we've talked about it before, right? What your brain tells you going into something that you have to complete generally is much worse than the actual effort that it's going to take to complete it. So our natural tendency is, oh, maybe I'll try and par it down a little bit, or maybe I'll try and shift it to tomorrow, or I'll break it into multiple steps. When the fact is, if you just completed it in the way that you know you need to, one, you get it done faster, and it's probably not as bad as it would have been, but you have a greater dopamine hit and sense of self-confidence and reward because you did something that you knew you needed to do all at once to the greatest capacity versus negotiating with yourself into multiple steps or a longer duration.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the last thing, because I do suffer from this as well, as a person that tries to do a lot and juggle a lot. I also don't have the best recall. We know that. But one of the things that helps me is it's almost like memory offload. So when I mentioned that study of the effects of that quasi need to go back, when you actually complete something off of your list completely, the next task that you focus on, you actually remember a lot more. And that's really important when you're doing a lot of things, when you're trying to juggle a lot. This is the same effect that you get from single task focusing versus multitask focusing, right? It's well known at this point. There's tons of studies on it that you actually can't multitask. It's better just to do things and do them to completion because it helps you focus, but also remember and pour more energy and resources into the thing that you're working on. So from a productivity standpoint, yes, it's much better there, but also the recall afterwards is much stronger and creates much more of an impact for later tasks down the line.
Yeah, there is a great activity if people have teams and they want to do it that actually highlights this. And you set up 2 different experiments with your teams and you can do M&Ms or Skittles or whatever in the middle of a table, and you give everybody a direction. For example, I'm going to time you. I want everyone to pull out, Nate, you do green Skittles. Lisa, you do red Skittles. So-and-so does whatever other color. Ready, set, go. And you time everybody to see how long it takes them to sort all of the Skittles into colors by each person having one assigned color. And then you do the same exercise, but everybody gets their own pile and they have to individually sort colors themselves. And that task, because your brain is looking at all these different colors simultaneously, while you're doing the same sort of sorting activity, your brain is multitasking, trying to figure out blue goes there, green goes here, versus if you're only looking for green or you're only looking for red, you'll be much more efficient and faster in your ability to complete something.
I love that. I wouldn't do well in that because I'm colorblind. But other than that, maybe it's by maybe by size or texture. I don't know. No, but I love that. I think that's great. I'm glad we covered this because, again, this is something that what was a real-time example for me. I know other people deal with it, but it is starting to drive me crazy. Like when I see things that are not completely finished, right? People walking by paper on the ground and not picking it up. When, I'm going to pick on my wife when she puts things in the garage and the garbage can is 10 feet away. And I'm like, come on, just walk the extra 10 feet, 10 right? Feet, yeah. But it's an example of, hey, when we just get things done, we number one, we don't have to have somebody else pick up for it. 2, we get that dopamine hit. 3, we're much more productive. And 4, I think the other kind of untalked about benefit that you and I are sharing here is like you subconsciously get to understand your internal narrative as well. So you
Yep.
can start to unwind. You start to look for things like, hey, now I know I'm just kind of slacking off. I can put more on the table because I'm not saying complete this. Or, hey, I really shouldn't be chunking this out. I just need to get it done. And that leads to much more long-term benefits, which I think is really key.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is awesome. I think a lot of people will benefit from us. Follow us for more fun team activities around focused activities. Just kidding.
Absolutely. Well, if you found this valuable, as Lisa mentioned, please put a comment down below, like, share, subscribe to the channel. And Lisa, we will see you tomorrow.
Sounds great. Good to see
All
you,
right.
Nate.
Talk to you
Take
soon.
care.
Bye.
All right. Bye.